Welcome to DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, so let's get started.
All right, welcome to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and today we have a special guest and a little bit different, Michael Mazzara. He is the CEO of Rogue Expedition. Michael, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing well. Now, I heard that people call you Maz or Michael, and you tell me what I should call you.
I go by Maz. It's way more distinct than I think yet another Michael in the world. The 90s was a big time for Michaels.
Yeah, my middle name's Michael, so
There you
I
go.
hear you. There's a lot of Michaels out there. So one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about your running journey. We'll talk a little bit about Rogue Expeditions as well and how you get into that. But I'm interested into how you became a runner, like in your interest in that. You live in Austin, Texas.
When I started running, I was in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And it's a funny story. I can't tell if it was funny while it happened, but it's funny in hindsight. I was working at a company for 6 or 7 years, and I didn't realize it at the time when I was bored. And I would wake up every day and just try to set a goal for myself. So I came up with instead of a New Year's resolution, I said, I'm going to set 30-day goals to do something extreme. And,
okay. Extreme.
And straightly, I would go vegan for a month, or I would wake up at 4 o'clock for a month. And one of the things was see if you can run a half marathon without training, and then see if you can train for 30 days and run a marathon.
All right. So just go run a half marathon without doing anything.
Marathon, no training.
Were you lifting weights or doing anything like that? Let's just make sure that.
I was a water polo player in college.
Okay.
What I learned is that I really distinctly thought it was mind over matter. And the half marathon proved, at least for me, that distance, it was a possible thing to do.
Doable.
So I ran to Manhattan, did my 11, came back over the Brooklyn Bridge, hit 13.1, and then sat down on the Brooklyn Bridge and couldn't get up.
So it's doable. It's just your body wasn't feeling good about it.
Doable. And I had to call my former girlfriend, soon to be wife, now wife, and I like hobbled the whole way back to my home.
Makes sense.
And I thought for a moment that this was an achievable goal, so I started training and would just rip out 10 miles a day.
Okay.
And in bad shoes and blew up both my knees within about 7 to 10 days. It was just a bad thing because it wasn't mind over matter. Your body needs to adapt. I learned a lot about just human mechanics in between one part and another.
I feel like you went the David Goggins way, in a way, the mindset, if you will, like he trains. So let's be real, but just with that mindset of, I'm just going to go fucking do it. And I can do it. I know I can just train 10 miles a day, but it wasn't true.
Exactly right. Yeah. And I was so stupid because I was just asking friends. One of my closest friends who's a runner was like 230 pounds, 6'1" runner. And I was like, which shoes you're wearing? I'll buy those. And
a friend of mine did that too. I was like,
I'm like mid 5 feet tall, 100 pounds less than him. And to think that I wasn't like, go to a run store, ask what you should wear. I was just like, he runs, so that's probably a good shoe.
That's normal. That's a normal mistake that people they don't know.
Yeah. So I ended up, after probably taking 3 or 4 months off of running and then getting back into it, I ran a self-guided marathon through the streets of Brooklyn with a friend. I think it took me 4.5 to 5 hours. I think I maybe had 20 to 30 gels. I don't think I hydrated really at all. And it was what's the furthest distance you go when you train?
It depends, like on a marathon, maybe 20 miles or 22 is the biggest. Most don't go the 26.
Yeah.
22 to 23, I guess.
Yeah. There was a point in training either for the marathon or doing the marathon where I entered this place that was very out of body. It was super surreal. And it was the sort of thing that felt very primal. I was like more in touch with my body and reality than I had ever experienced before.
During the first marathon?
During my first self-guided marathon. Yeah.
Wow.
To a point where I was in so much pain that I like forgot how to do things. I forgot that where I lived. I was like trying to think of it, and it was just exhaustion. But there was like in it, I could reflect back on the experience and was like, this is amazing. This is like a part of being.
This is amazing.
It was a part of being alive. Had an experience. It's like somebody showing you a different color, and that was just a crazy experience for me. that I found that I really loved running those longer distances. I really loved being in touch with my body. And I lived in Brooklyn, so I did that a lot just through the streets of Brooklyn. And then when I moved to Texas, I found that I just went to, there's a place right out 45 minutes outside of Austin to the west called Reimer's Ranch. And I've been recovering from an injury that, and for the first time got out there and just spent like 2 or 3 hours like running around this 800-acre ranch. And
Summer.
it was like last week. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, all right, let's back up. So when you went to Brooklyn, or when you're in Brooklyn, how many marathons and things did you do? Were you becoming an experienced runner then, or was it more when you came to Austin?
Yeah, I'll tell you something fun. I've signed up for maybe 15 to 20 marathons, and I think I've completed 3.
That's great.
The reason is because I get injured sometimes through a freak accident, and then like I'll fall off a curb. But most of the time, it's just people will look at me and go, your body is probably telling you that you're not a runner. And I was just supposed to run a 50-mile race 2 weekends ago. And I was getting up to 70 or 80 miles a week. And through no acute injury at all, like I wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. I wasn't doing a tempo run. I wasn't pushing myself. All of a sudden I pull my groin, just like in the middle of a regular run. And it is really disheartening to be.
All that training is definitely disheartening.
But I love the process of training. There was no part of me going out there and being not looking forward to today's run. But it just, then when you get injured, there's that, you spend every 15 to 17 minutes on WebMD and you're like, okay, if it's a groin pull, it's 4
WebMD.
If it's 4 weeks, that puts me 2 weeks out. So can I still regain my? So then I go to the search that says, how long can I stop running before I lose my fitness gains? And it's like a week. And you're like, okay, fuck, I can't.
I don't think you need WebMD anymore. You can use ChatGPT or Claude or some of those. It probably gives you pretty good answers nowadays, no?
They're all kind of copies of one another. And I'm looking for whatever information tells me that it'll take a 2-week recovery. If they told me it was a 3-day recovery time, that's the authority on the matter.
Yeah.
And
whatever it tells you what you want to hear.
Yeah, whatever's the most optimistic.
Got it.
And ChatGPT will invent these terms where they're like, oh, it's a tier 1 sprain. And then I'll go to a doctor and I'm like, it's a tier 1 sprain. They're like, I don't even know what that is.
That's not really
tier 1 sprains.
You should say, doctor, you just don't know your books, because look at ChatGPT.
Let's go to the chat.
It's right here.
Yeah. So it ended up being this thing where I signed up for a whole bunch of races. I canceled Chicago Marathon, I think 2 or 3 times, dropped out of a 50-mile race, dropped out of a whole bunch of half marathons, always with an injury. It was this phenomenon where I was either running or an injured runner waiting to run again. It never really crossed my mind that I was going to opt out of the running game.
So I have a question relating to one of your philosophies. So one of your philosophies, from what I could tell, or at least this thought, was this stop racing mentality and go on trips that are really awesome so you can run but not have to race. Is that why? Because, hey, I'm getting injured. Screw this. Let's just go for a nice trip and running.
I realized was one of the hardest things about racing for me was that injury and waiting to see if I'd be okay for a long enough period. And I would be able to still not drop out of the race because I had flights and I had all these people that were showing up or traveling with me. And they all were so excited. And I did this thing where I created a bunch of accountability for myself. I set goals with other people. And you'd get 3 months into training and everybody would be so excited. And then you'd be like, I'm dropping out. And
it's a letdown for not just you, but obviously
pull down. Yeah.
Feel guilty.
And one thing that I started to observe was in cross training, you look at cycling and you talk to a bunch of cyclists and you go, are you a competitive cyclist? And they're like, no. And I also don't even know anybody who competes in a race. And you're like, so what do you do? You're like, I go out on the weekend with my friends and then I cycle. We go to Italy every year and cycle around. And I was like, that sounds way cooler than going to Indianapolis to run a race. And then you look at these other recreational sports, like say running as a recreation, golf trips, you have yoga retreats, you have cycling trips. And then all of a sudden you have running and it's everybody's racing. Yeah, everybody's signing up for a race. Everybody's committing to a half marathon. People will ask you if you're training, what your distance is or what your time is.
Yeah, that's right.
And I can't tell if the barrier to entry in running is so much lower that if you're golfing, you just want to do, it's not as intuitive that you would compete. You assume that you have to be at a higher level to compete, where running created more accessibility to racing. So then the default like linear outcome of you buy a pair of running shoes, you're racing. I was like, it feels wrong. I feel mismatched to the service or the product that's being recommended to me exclusively. And I want people to know that my mission is to create another channel by which you can experience the joy of running. I think run clubs did that now. I think local communities do that. And
They're huge in Dallas, by the way. There's literally 50 running clubs or more in DFW.
yeah,
I can't even count them anymore.
I think what the big thing that happened was run clubs became the reward themselves, where if you were training for a half marathon, you were like, I'm going to struggle through the training in order to tell people or myself that I got to the point where I ran the half marathon and that's my goal. And then all of a sudden you could go, my goal is just to show up to run club on Wednesday. And then you didn't need to fill and now I'm running a race or there's some other component to my running experience. So I think that was like the biggest unlock for me, was to realize that the running community today, or the running opportunities that are afforded to us, are a little too one-dimensional, and opening a new channel for that's important.
I think that's pretty cool. I think as I kind of look at running clubs, people really like the community, right? They want to exercise, they would like to run. They have certain goals, whether it's just to run with friends or run fast and hit a marathon or half marathon at a certain time, run with these people that help you and push you to get to those certain times. And that's why you see these some of them are mini running clubs, some of them are bigger running clubs and things like that. So I believe it's really more about the community of getting together and doing things with your friends on a consistent basis. And in this case, it's running, but we do it all the time in everything that we do.
Yeah, and running's one of those things, it's like all blank space, the same way that golfing is. Golfing, you have to be in, most people don't golf by themselves. It's a crew of 4. And running, the idea that you go out and go through 30 to 60 minutes of looking at nothing and thinking about nothing is like a good opportunity to actually link it up with a community-based effort to distract yourself. So like the mechanism itself actually lends itself really well to community. And I think it's not exclusive. It tends to be overhyped that like all Gen Z people are running to like date, but it did become a thing that people drank less, and the opportunity to then go out, at least in New York, was very centered, and maybe the same as in Dallas. The barrier to entry on seeing somebody is high because there's other things, there's traffic, and so you have to make it into something, and so you have to make it into a dinner, or we're going out drinking. And if you can replace that with something else, it has to be worthy of your time.
Or Maz, sometimes in the running club, we have this Thursday night kind of group that gets together. And during the summer, we'll either hang out and not run at the local trail, or we'll just go to a local bar,
Yeah.
especially when it gets cold or rainy and nasty outside. So anyways,
It's a great way to experience the city. Like, I think Dallas is huge, but in Austin, you can run from one side of the city to another and experience every different type of local bar that's hard to get to. And I feel the same way about any sort of running and travel, that when I would go to Mexico City and they would go, run in that park, but not to that park. And I was like, what's wrong with the street? And then I went to Japan for my honeymoon and I ran around Tokyo, and the difference between walking a city and being in an Uber on a city is very vast in terms of a peek inside what that local city culture is like. What does it look like to eat breakfast in Tokyo amongst a bunch of Japanese people? And I think running is that beautiful, like that middle ground, where bicycle you have etiquette, right? Am I on the sidewalk? Am I not on the sidewalk? Where running, I think, is that real, it's like a grassroots, you're in the scene without being too tied down to it. And if you can do 5 or 10 miles within a city center, man, you're really feeling it. You like see every part of what's going on the inner workings,
Sure.
how these cultures exist.
Unless you're racing. If you're in a race, then you're probably not even paying attention. You're just trying to get through the race.
You're crying the whole time and you're worried about your nutrition, and like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's like a fake experience of a city because people come in for it. It's all barricaded up. You're not actually getting the experience of what it's like to be in Dallas, and it's different. But I think each race is indicative of the running community or culture, because the people too try to build courses around what's unique about that city.
Yeah. So let's get into that. I'm interested kind of in the experience, the runnings. My wife and I have done a few things in the past. And as a matter of fact, last September, we went on this trip to France in the Alps. It's a company called Run the Alps. I think Doug got this great experience. We went to Chamonix and Chamaret, or whatever it is. Ran in the mountains in both Switzerland and France for 5 days. And we even did this Colorado trip a few years ago that was all in the mountains. It's 120 miles, 120 or 20,000 feet of gain, just going from one place to another in Colorado. So we do love doing those kinds of things. And it was the experience about, the French trip was more about the experience of just running in the Alps and different kind of, you go to different things. So you get to go kind of, I forget what they call them, but you go to the top of the mountain and they have this place where you can eat a lunch and have a coffee and eat some sweets. And that was part of the whole experience. And then you go back down the mountain, and it was this luxurious-ish kind of trip, but for running every single day in the Alps.
Yeah.
And I know that that was not about racing. It was just about running in the Alps and doing crazy things. They'd kind of, people were about your fitness level, which was crazy how they did that. It's cool. This cool guy that we had two guides. One of the guides used to be an elite trail runner, and you could tell like whenever he'd run, he was just like one of those animals that just go anywhere in the mountains. It's like, damn dude, like his name's Gideon. And then they had this cool dinner with Doug and some other people that were help. I don't know what they were doing there, but there was some executives or whatever there. But I got to sit down by Doug, had this long conversation because he's a journalist and all this stuff. So it was really, for me, it was a really great experience. And I think that what Rogue is doing, right? Rogue Expeditions. Tell me more about that. You acquired them back last year, right? And then they've been around for 12 years. And then you bought them.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going too much in there, but look, I love these ideas. And as a matter of fact, I was looking at the Patagonia trip. My wife and I were like, maybe we'll think about that later in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think, like I was saying about the other, like Doug is ahead of the game in terms of we've actually been around for about as long as he did. Rogue was started in Austin, Texas by a husband and wife team. The wife was a former professional marathoner. She won the Austin Marathon a handful of times. The husband was big into the outdoors, rafting guide, things like that. And it made sense together with their combined skill set. And I think what Doug really did was he became one within the Chamonix culture. And UTMB over the last 10 years has gone from 2,000 people entering for 2,000 spots
Trellis has exploded, dude, there.
for 25,000 people applying for 6,000 spots. They launched, OCC and a bunch of the different other verticals. And so even though if you're in trail today, you're like another Mont Blanc like video series that comes out, but there's just nothing like it in the world. So it's really unique and
It's awesome.
it's awesome. You've had the experience. And I've told Doug this before is I view him as really having that ownership of that market. I think other people come in and they try to produce the same tours from a lower price point. And I think that's okay because a lot of people don't have attachment to run the Alps and don't need the prestige within the trail community that he has. But for me, I think I would do or go to Chamonix maybe like once in my lifetime and then I can the rest of the world.
Yeah.
That is interesting. And if you look at the greatest mountain ranges in the world, people talk about the Atlas Mountains. They talk about Torres del Paine National Park in Patagonia. And talk about, if you've ever been to Iceland before, it's like going to another planet. There's
Heard about that, yeah.
lava rock everywhere next to glaciers. It's phenomenal. And so the idea is when you can travel to another country and you're a runner, often what happens is if you have a non-running spouse or if you're a runner, you fit in runs, you're on all trails and you're like, okay, like Reykjavik's interesting. And can we go to this neighborhood? And then you check all trails or Google Maps and you're trying to see if there's you drop your pin into that corner and you're like, is that sketchy or is there graffiti? Is that graffiti normal? And then that's just the city where there's really good infrastructure for figuring out how to run. And then if I told you, hey, if you go to Iceland, the most pretty thing that you could run around, it's not Reykjavik. It's actually at the top of a glacier or it's just massive waterfall that's hundreds of feet tall. And do you want to figure out how to get there and where to park your car or how to take the ferry to this other island that has 6 people and some sheep that live on it? And do you want to run around that island? Do you want to figure out how to do that yourself? Or there's a company that's been doing it for 12 years. We go and spend a week in Iceland. We meet a bunch of Icelandic people and runners. We meet an on-the-ground tour operator that usually does it for hiking or rafting or something like that. And then we teach them the ropes about what we need for a trail running trip and what's specific about it. We go run all those trails. We try to assemble. We anchor each trip in saying this is a country and we're going to pick the best running routes, but you're also in that country. So it's not just about being in running on the trails of the Atlas Mountains. It's about being in Morocco. So expect to have a tea ceremony with our tour partner and his family in Morocco on each of the Morocco trips. And it's all these different things.
Doing the local things.
the way you could also describe it is like immersive, like cultural travel for runners. And I think in getting into the business, that's more of the thing that I've learned is that running as a service can be commoditized because a lot of people live in cities and a lot of people run. What are you offering distinctly that's different? And it's saying, okay, we cater to a specific individual, or we know how to select partners, or we select hotels at a certain quality, and we cater to people who come from the United States that have a certain set of standards. We know what they like. We know what immersive travel looks like for them. And it's never going to be dicey or unpredictable or whatever. You're not going to feel bad. And also, like, the other thing that's hard when you look at Backroads or you look at Intrepid or all these big companies, you'll look at hiking trips, you look at cycling trips, rafting, all the things, you won't see any trail running trips. And the reason is because it's a lot more complex to produce these trips because you have somebody who's 65 years old and somebody who's 35 years old on the same trip running at a separate pace. And when you're hiking, everybody's together. With you cycling, you have an e-bike and a regular bike. Trail running, people are like, I don't even know how this works.
Exactly. How do I get on this bike?
Yeah. And so for us, the thing is, I feel really proud that we work with our two lead guides. One's name is Kara. She's Canadian. She's an ultra runner. She's badass. She's like our lead guide. She's like our head of trips. And then we've got this guy, Lynn, who does 15 or 20 trips with us. He's a Santiago, or like Chilean ultra runner. And we have two guides on every trip, either one of them and then a second local guide. The lead guide runs the front basically of the group and marks the trail behind them. And the second guide stays with the person at the very back of the group and does a sweep. So basically picks everything up and everybody falls in between. I'm sure Run the Alps did it the same way.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting on their guides because I think they're more contractors than anything. And these guides aren't full time with the company, from my understanding. And they go from guide company to guide company, and they're hoping to pick up they love Run the Alps, but there's different ones. And then sometimes they'll get personal. Like this one guy, he goes, yeah, I'm going to do a tour. This group of people that hired me directly because of maybe Run the Alps or whatever. And they were like paying him to go to Portugal and do this thing. So he had to do. So the point is they're interesting in themselves to me. Like I love just talking to them to understand their jobs better and how do you make money on a consistent basis? For them, it's doing different jobs. It's not a full-time gig at Run the Alps, for example. It's just they do it for a season and then they go somewhere else for a season.
Yeah. I think thankfully for a lot of these guides, you have to be wilderness first aid certified.
Yeah, that's right.
Really hard thing to do. And then they also have a mountaineering type certification, which is also a harder thing to come by. The hard thing, like we do trips to the Dolomites in Italy, which is probably the second most popular trail running destination on the planet right now.
By the way, I hear they're most people's favorite tour or thing to go do. So yeah, I think maybe that's in the next one or something if we go back out.
Yeah, we have these. You'll have to. You talk to me. We have a really good one. Generally, I think the Dolomites is just like spectacular. It's Italian culture. We do this thing where the assistant guide on that one has 3 or 4 generations have owned a hotel at the top of the mountain it's a refugio in Italy. And so that's one day where you actually can't take a vehicle to it. You have to fast pass, or you have to take your belongings for that night.
Cool.
And then you climb up to the top of this and then stay and eat dinner as the sun sets and the entire valley turns orange. And then you sleep there and then you run down in the morning. That's one of the most badass things that you can do. I think it's really interesting that we're entering into this. I love Doug because I think what he's doing is it raises awareness for it, because I think so many people want to go run UTMB, but it's so freaking hard. I don't know if you have, but I watched the Jim Walmsley documentary, the Wahoo one, where he's in UTMB, and it is so inspiring. But he's also the best ultra runner ever lived.
Ever.
And
well,
he is delirious by the end of this run, the middle of the night. And so I have a friend that did it. It took him 33 hours and he shredded his knees from mile 99 to 100 and whatever. And if you think for a second, I'm anywhere interested in doing that, the answer is you're wrong. I'd rather go with Doug to go hang out and eat a blueberry pancake in the mountains.
Me too. I'm not like, my wife has done 100-milers and things like that.
Amazing.
Yeah, but I'm not. We'll do epic trips, but I'm not going to go run 100 miles in a day or however long it takes to do it, or 50 miles for that As a matter of fact, I don't even run marathons anymore. I run half marathons, and I'll do day long or 5 or 6 day long trips that are 20 or 25 miles, but not, I'm just not a big ultra, let's do all these things. I've done a few 50Ks and things, but I'm with you. Like, I'm not, just too much.
Yeah. I think there's something really interesting that happens, and I think about this a lot because obviously it's the business, but there's so many different types of exercise. And when you grow up, will tell you to go to the gym. And you then learn that the people who are the most cardiovascularly or physically fit are like people whose physical activity was play to them, and they were long distance skiers, or they just rode their bikes, or they rode, or they canoed, or something like that. And those were the people who actually reaped the greatest reward of like just loving to move. And I think that part of my journey was falling out of love with the fact that people told me like you have to essentially go to the gym for it was as though if somebody said you were going to the gym, you had to compete in a bodybuilding competition. And I was like, what? And they were like, that's just what you do. They give you a medal for not winning. You get a shirt that you sometimes want, sometimes don't.
Most of the time, throw it away.
And then you were like, what if I just wanted to do it for these other reasons? They're like, I don't know, man. Everybody's doing this other thing. They're all competing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I really love the idea of just everybody can have their own event. I love that so many new people are coming into the sport. I love that your wife does 100 milers. I love that a bunch of people buy Brooks Ghosts and it's a shoe they'll wear for the rest of their life. I think so many people not so many people. I think it's a vocal minority of people that have strong opinions about what is and is not a runner and what is and is not okay. And I mostly just felt
That's all bullshit.
not important.
I think that, yeah, I think that people that run on the road or people that run on the trails, and I feel like, believe it or not, like I've been around trail runners for a long time, and they're like, "Oh, those road runners, they just don't believe in whatever." And I'm like, "That's not true. We're just as passionate as trail runners, just in a different way." I think that, but I love what you're doing you're bringing this vacation-like experience, being outdoors, but still being able to go in and go to the hotel, nice places to stay when you're done, and all that kind of stuff. But it's really getting out there, enjoying what's out there in the world. And I like the idea of it's not necessarily a race. Not to go and race this thing. And my thought is like a lot of people here in Dallas, one of the bigger clubs used to be called Dallas Dirt Runners, and there's still a Facebook group for them, but they're a little spread out now in their own kind of different ways, but they still manage that. But there's a lot of road runners here, a lot, and lots of races and things like that. How do you convince somebody to say, especially in DFW, let's just say, this is really a cool trip for family, or for maybe it's not a family thing, maybe it's your buds or whatever. Maybe it's a corporate thing. I kind of like it as a corporate thing.
Yeah.
Hardcore people going out doing some hardcore shit. But it can be for anybody. How do you talk about it and get people kind of interested? Because I know for a fact it's amazing.
Yeah, I'd say most of our runners are road runners doing 4 to 5 half marathons a year. If you think about the idea that if you live in Boulder, Colorado, or you have access to beautiful trails all day, every day, you maybe feel less of the need to be out in a kind of surreally beautiful place. I think most people, it's a challenge with growing the business in terms of how to articulate it. But I think some people will think, oh, do I go on these things because I'm not a trail runner, or who is it for? And I think generally, if you're the type of person who goes on any vacation and tries to fit in a run, or you try to experience some of your trip through like running, that this is the sort of thing for you. And
100%.
certain trips are harder. Like we go to Albania, and if we want some mountain experience on that one because we have 3 back-to-back 3,000 feet of climbing, 10-mile or more days. But if you're going to Morocco, or you're going to Slovenia, or you're going to Ireland or Patagonia, we have vehicle support, we have shorter routes, we have everything like that. And nothing we're doing is overly technical that you're going to have to go invest into a hardcore technical Solomon training shoe. And I think the other thing I'd say is these things are designed really to be a vacation and to like index on joy during running. And if you have to go to bed that night and you're anxious about having to get up the next day and do the run, well, get out of town. Like, what kind of vacation is that? You're stressed out the whole time. So each thing is really designed to We keep the groups intentionally small so that there's more customization. And if somebody goes, I don't want to do today's run, or I'm not feeling it, or I'd rather do something cultural or historical, rad. Let's help you get there. But I think hopefully, if there's people that are just generally curious about having these bucket list destinations that they've always wanted to go, they're runner, and they thought those things were mutually exclusive. That's like an important unlock.
What I love about it is that it is like a vacation, but you're active all the time, right? There's always something to do. So even when you're done with that run, whether it's 7 or 10, I don't know, however many miles it is, going up and down the mountains, you get to see all this beauty. When you're done, you're ready to rest a little bit, right? So you get an hour or two to rest, then you go to dinner, and then after dinner, you want to go to bed because tomorrow you have to go do it over again to see this amazing beauty. And I'll just tell a little experience because you mentioned we customize it to, hey, maybe it's snowing that day. I don't know, whatever. Maybe we'll just adjust the schedule. One day, it was in September when we were doing the Alps, one of the trips, we're going up the mountain at the high and it started snowing. Not just snowing a little bit, but just like crazy snow. It never does that in the Alps at that time, but it did that day. Luckily we had the gear and stuff like that. And so you're going through these, I want to say fields. I don't even know what they are because you can't see besides big chunk of snow all over. And so you can't see anything but white snow all over and hitting your face and the wind. I would say it was miserable, but it's uncomfortable because here in Texas, you're not used to stuff like that and trying to climb mountains. Say climb, hike mountains, run mountains. We were running and they were like, hey, instead of going through this field, we could go this way or it is a little bit longer to go this way. And I said, my feet are starting to get really cold. I just want to go. It was on the road, right? Like instead of in the field and kind of, and other people are like, no, I want to do this. I was like, you gave us the option. So I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And you guys can do that because you have two guides. And then one guide was like, one guide would go this way. But everybody decided instead to do it because I felt slightly uncomfortable. Just look, I don't like to be cold for long.
Yeah.
And the snow was just, I was like, oh, I don't like it. And it was hitting my knees when I'm walking through it. And so point was, it was a great experience. The guides are very open. And look, it wasn't with you guys, but sounds just like what you guys do.
Yeah, exactly right. I think, it's really a great product for people that are runners beneath, like the idea of some adventure in their lives and also are hitting the point. I've talked to a tremendous amount of people that aren't really in running media. Like they don't watch runners or listen to any podcast. They like the Des Linden podcast, but I think this is the right place for it, where the identity group is runners, and people are passionate about their communities that they're participatory in. They don't really care about looking for elite performers. They're not watching Conor Mantz. Like they think it's like it's cool, but they are doctors and lawyers and they have families and those things are really important to them. And running is a part of their identity group. And I think there's a part, maybe like you've gotten to as well, where when people, let's say you're on the journey of racing, what you index on, at least at the start, is something that you feel like you can finish. And so that maybe it's proximity and then maybe it's the ease of the course. Then once you feel a little bit of confidence in that, you elevate to maybe I'm close to qualifying or getting a certain time that I really want to get. And I'm going to index on a course or scenery type experience that's optimizing for either a racecation or
like that.
often qualifying time or something like that. Then you hit this like third tier where you're like Grand Big Sur and I did Sedona and there's no other place I really want to go in the US. And maybe I go to like Marathon Tours and Travel and see if I can do the Reykjavik Marathon. Like all of a sudden you start to just like cross into this chasm where you're really indexing on experience because you don't know what else to do with your running and you're over PRing. You don't go all the way out to Reykjavik to see if you could like PR that marathon. There's other things you could PR closer. That's not going to cost you a couple grand. So I say that all because I think sometimes when I hear somebody articulate the stage of life I'm in, I didn't even realize I was there. I go, oh my God, they're saying what I felt without actually having to be there. And so I think one side is, did you always feel a little mismatched from the racing experience? Number two, did you just get to a point in your life where the excitement around traveling to races starting to become a little bit less about the experience of the race itself and a little bit more about being able to experience different races, race cultures, locations, vacations type of thing.
You said it well, man. What comes to my mind is, as I interview lately, some really fast people that are hitting these marathon in Boston and under 3 hours and stuff like that. A lot of these people are very focused on race day. So, like, I was talking to a panel yesterday on a podcast, and they're very serious runners. 3 women run under 240. One of them's 234, one's 235, one's 237, and a couple of guys running under 240, so 237, 238. And when all of them said this is, when I go to a race, so they're going to Boston, they're spending all this money on Boston. When I say a lot of money, it's a lot of money, right? Like, you think about, nobody's paying for your airfare, nobody's paying for your hotel, nobody's paying all the things that you pay for. It's probably $4,000 or $5,000 just to do that. I went, my wife went, she's done 12 Boston marathons in a row. You're paying for that experience, but they're serious and they're not being able to, and maybe they do it afterwards, but during that time, they're not experiencing the whole entire atmosphere. They're just doing that race and trying to get whatever the time is.
Yeah.
Trying to hit the 234 or whatever. To what you're talking about. They go around doing this in Chicago and New York and Berlin and London and Tokyo, etc. It's all the same. And there's something awesome about it. I'm not saying that there's not, but a lot of these runners too that I talk to, the marathon runners, not those particular ones, sometimes a little bit easier for them to get in, but are spending on marathon tours, like to get into Tokyo or to get into London or whatever. You're spending $8,000 just for one person. You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, there's gotta be, like, when you think of what you're giving people, like, that's even more, right? You're giving an experience that, yeah, it's expensive, but like it's expensive for a reason, right? Like, the experience that you get, you're getting hotels, a lot of times the food, you're getting the local guides and the guide there that have been through it and have done it, and an amazing experience and safety and all this stuff. But to me, like, it's amazing to go into the Alps and see some cool shit that I've never seen before. And like you said, you get me excited about this because it's a ton of fun. And what you're giving to people is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I also want to reiterate that I don't shit on racing. I love when I watch the quarterback series or the F1 series or
Yeah.
the dance. I'm like, man, it would be sick to be a high performance athlete.
Yeah.
It would be very stressful. But if my body could do those things, what a joy on earth it would be to push myself
Absolutely.
limits. If you worked
I'm all for competition, man. I love competition.
your whole dang life to qualify
I have a
for
podcast now. I talk to people that compete because I can't compete like those.
Dude, get in there. I think the reason it's funny because I think about how to communicate the value proposition of the business. And I think it's funny because humans, in terms of marketing, really aren't great at processing nuanced things. So it's a running trip, but if it's for you and who are you? Things become when they become very binary, you can align them with people's identity. And so you have to communicate in a way that allows people to see what part of their identity it falls into. And so if you feel disenfranchised or mismatched with your race experience, then if I can communicate in that way that it's for you, then at least that's the opening for you to start thinking about it. And I think these conversations are really important for me and for the business because I think what we have is a narrative problem in the world that it just is not top of mind that people talk about this or know that it exists. And so begrudgingly, people continue to do the same stuff over and over again, feel some sense of misalignment with it, and then that's the rest of their lives. And I think that being able to serve as a vehicle for this message, I don't know if I'm the best person to do it. I just know I'm here right now, and at least I'm starting, and that's part of the equation. That's all. I can just give it my best in that. But hyped. I was trying to do the 50 miler, so I do like the idea of racing. I just hate actually racing.
You don't get to the race that much.
I know. Not much to dislike. So at least for me, within my life, it hasn't presented the most amount of value. So hopefully that resonates with people. I think that would be, and honestly, if people have questions, I think for this group of people that are probably really well aligned. And if they feel curious or passionate, I would just say my email is michael@rogueexpeditions.com. You can email me direct. It's expeditions with one E, so ROGUEX. There's another one. That guy has hunting trips and seems like a really nice guy, but we don't do hunting trips. We do running trips. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can just email me directly.
Maz, this has been really great. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that experience and kind of what you're doing. And I feel like I could talking to you for another hour or so, but maybe we'll come on again. But anything that I missed that you wish I would have covered?
No, I'm going to ask you one fun question that I like hearing people's answers to every once in a while. It's not running related. It's just a general, what's something that you think a lot about that you don't get the opportunity to talk a lot about?
I don't know, man. I'm a talker, and I feel like I'm in an interview right now. I think a lot about, nobody wants to hear about what I do for work, and I think about work a lot, but I also think about how to I build online communities for a living and done it for a lot of companies and then even events and things like that. But I try to push that out to my personal life. So running is the piece I push that out to. So whether it's creating content or getting people connecting to the community, I kind of combine my work life with also so I probably do talk about it too much, but I don't necessarily talk about how I've got there and what I've been doing for all these years. But I think about it all the time. And so I think about retirement. In 5 years, 6 years, it'd be really nice to retire, and close.
Yeah.
So I think those things I don't necessarily I might tell some people. That's a big one. I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah, it does. I think as we have our spouses and they get sick of listening to us every once in a while.
for sure.
And sometimes some of us are fortunate enough that we go to therapy and we talk about stuff with our closest confidants. Our parents don't really want to hear. At a certain point, you kind of talk to them about the things that they like talking about. And then, your friends, you move to a socially level acceptable of catch up until you do some meaningful coverage, but you don't get to the things that you sit and ruminate on a lot of the times. I think that there's not often a forum for people to unlock parts of their brains that sometimes just sitting dormant and sometimes becomes a nice thing to talk about every once in a while. So that's more just an open thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I appreciate you asking that question. Just being put on the spot there, it wasn't necessarily the best answer, but it was intriguing. I like that.
Yeah. Ask your future guests, see if you get anything interesting.
I think I might. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in to another DFW Running Talk. Please rate and review us. Until then, Mass, thanks again for coming.
Thanks so much for having us.